Broadcasting from a galaxy not so far away, this is Inalienable Rights, the podcast that will take you on a journey across continents from North America to Africa to the Caribbean and back again. The Stewart family will share their stories and all they've learned about life, faith, and the pursuit of medicine.
I'm Justin.
And I'm Alyssa.
And welcome to the Inalienable Rights podcast, where we talk about our journey of life,
faith,
and the pursuit of medicine. We're excited today to share our second guest, a very special guest.
Yes.
My other best friend that I met at Ross University School of Medicine.
Yeah, I actually wasn't able to be a part of the conversation. I had something else going on that night. Unfortunately, so I missed out, and so I am just as excited as you guys are to hear his story. But Justin was able to sit down and kind of ask him some questions, and I think some similar questions to what you asked Isaac, right? So
yep, very similar.
Kind of on the same vein. We're trying to just hear people's stories and kind of, provide some consistency along the way, some framework rather for them to be able to share their journey and their story. So we really hope that you enjoy this.
And Joe, he's a great guy, a great friend of mine, super inspirational. He is like me. He's going to tell you his whole story, but it's actually a third career for him. He's changed his career twice. He was an ultrasound tech, and then he was a PA, and now he's going to med school. So him and I had a lot in common because he's also married with kids, and he's going to tell all about his story. So hope you enjoy. Just right on time. Here he is. This is the great and the wonderful, the one and the only, the myth, the man, the legend, Mr. Joseph Homy. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Excited to discuss a few things and hopefully share some great knowledge.
Yes, this is going to be good. I'm glad that you could make it. So for those of you who are watching, Joseph and I are about a week and a half or a little less than a half away from taking the biggest exam of our lives up to this point. So no pressure, but we're studying our brains out. So I'm glad that you would take some time to chat with us. Alyssa's not going to join us tonight. She had some other things going on and she's feeling pretty tired, and she's earnestly packing with her mom to get our house ready to go. So she's wore out, and she thought I could handle this on my own. So
you got this.
We got this. So Joseph, why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about who you are?
So my name is Joseph Homy. I am 46 years young. I know I don't look it. But
people still think I'm older than you. I can't figure it out, but I am not as old as Joseph, but it's close enough, I guess.
Yeah, you're only as old as you feel.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm 46 years old. I grew up in Miami, Florida. Grew up there my whole life. Born and raised. Love God. Grew up in the church. At the time I was little, and came to Christ at a young age. I think I was 6 years old when I came to know the Lord. I went to a Billy Graham crusade, and I asked my mom, I was like, "Hey, mom, I think I'm ready to be saved." So she took me up there, and gave my life to Christ, and I've been following Him ever since, and have a big passion for medicine, for helping people. That's kind of like the cornerstone of who I am, in my heart. So, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah. So you say you're passionate about medicine, but your journey wasn't really straightforward to be a doctor. Did you think you wanted to be a doctor when you were a kid and took another path, or because obviously you're, similar to me, you're in your 40s and now you're in med school. So your path wasn't a straight one. So what did you do before med school? And, did you always want to be a doctor, or what happened along the way,
So it's funny thing is that actually when I was a kid, I remember my mom actually had a little doctor's set. Because I think she knew that I wanted to be into medicine, and I remember her giving me a little doctor's set, and I remember saying, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a doctor. And as you get older, life happened. As I got older, I actually knew I wanted to get into medicine, but I wasn't sure exactly what. So my mom made sure, like when I was young in my teenage years, to have me volunteer in the hospital and to see, the different parts of the hospital to see how things were. And
No,
basically,
is your mom a doctor or what?
oh no, no, my mom, she is a educator. She's a teacher.
Okay.
She's a teacher. Yeah. So yeah, so no, my sister, I have a sister who's a nurse practitioner, and I had a brother that actually he went to become a doctor over in the Dominican Republic. But outside of that, no one else in our family is in the medical field.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, but I basically I volunteered in the hospital. Long story short, I ended up getting a position working as a transporter. Um, from that, I decided I was going to do. I actually wanted to become a physician assistant. Because when I was 16, I was seen by a PA, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like it's almost like being a doctor and doing the same thing the doctor does without all the responsibility. And so my original plan was to do PA. So then that kind of got derailed after I got out of high school. I actually did ultrasound for a little bit. Then I decided I wanted to go back and do PA. So I went back to school, when it became a PA, and then God just put in my heart one day. I was with my doctors, and I was like, yeah, I was like, you know what? I could do this, like working with the doctors I was working with, I was like, I think I can do this. So it was like a light bulb switch went on. I spoke with my family. I was like, hey, if you guys are in agreement and, you guys believe what I'm believing with God, then, let's do this thing.
So I love that you were brief because you just covered like 20 some years of your life in like a couple paragraphs. So just for our listeners, just so they're a little clear on this, you were an ultrasound tech for 10 years
Correct. Yeah. So I
before
did
you
all the
went, and then you went to be a PA, and then you were a PA for 10
10
years,
years.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. But I have a 10-year itch. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
No,
hopefully,
well, you'll be a doctor for 10 years. It'll be time to retire, right? So,
I don't think I'll do anything else after this. I think this is the last
this
education
is
that I get.
the last career change, right? So,
Yes, correct.
well,
Correct.
well, I like your story. It's similar to mine, but a little different. But the same idea
Mhm.
that we've both kind of been going to school like our whole lives. So we
Yes.
just can't decide what we want to do when we grow up. Or we've. Did you feel like for me, I did the X-ray thing, and but
Hmm.
I always felt like I settled. Did you ever have
Right.
that feeling like when you're doing ultrasound, like I think I settled for less than what I was really supposed to do, or do you just
Yeah.
view it as it was just a step in the direction, you know?
So it was kind of like twofold because I definitely felt like it wasn't enough. I did ultrasound for 10 years and I was like, I love ultrasound. I kind of maxed out my knowledge and my being proficient at it. And so I was like, what's the next challenge?
See,
Um,
so I want to pause right there for a second because
yeah.
I was the same way. Like an X-ray, I'm just like I could literally like it wasn't intellectually stimulating. Like it was really fascinating. Like I loved it when I was in school, but when I got
Mhm.
into the job, it's like you could literally just turn your brain off and
Right.
do the job. And that's fine for a lot of people. And there's nothing wrong with anybody who wants to do that. But for me, I just always felt like I feel like I'm not
What's your
living
potential?
up to my potential, if that's the right word for it.
Yeah. And also, it's funny with me in my life, I always felt like things have been I don't want to say delayed, but I feel like God is, it is timing. So I think that I think like with the PA, I wasn't ready at 20 when I wanted to
Yeah.
I wanted to go to the age of 20 and I wasn't ready. I wasn't mature enough.
It
So I
would have
think
been a
God
disaster for me
had
to
a
have
disaster.
gone, yeah, too. Same.
So I feel like the same thing with medicine, God used me learning, going to ultrasound, all the experience of that, networking, becoming a PA, all that knowledge to prepare me for this great stage.
That's great. See, sometimes I go back and forth. I'm struggling like, okay, God, did I like miss you along the way? And I should have done this a long time ago. But ultimately I settle on, you know what? It was part of his plan to prepare me. And even though I'm, now in my 40s and I'm, most of our classmates are half our age, but yet,
Yeah.
but yet I still feel somehow this was his plan. So that's cool.
Yeah. Me
So
too.
so why so you've decided now you've been a PA for 10 years. You've got a
Hmm.
wife, you've got a kid, you're kind of living almost your dream in Miami. It's warm, it's beautiful, and you're like you guys got some money. You're like, "Hey, you know what?
Yeah.
Let's take like, 7 years of my life or more and go back
Yeah. Yeah.
making no money and do this." Like, when you made that decision, why did you choose like Ross? I mean, did you go try other medical schools or why did you choose Ross?
So, so after a long discussion with my family, we decided as a family, like, okay, we're gonna do this, they're in agreement. And me, I was like, of course, obviously, all my family's in Florida, so I would love to stay in South Florida. And so I applied. I applied to about, I think, 15 schools, maybe about seven or eight in Florida, and then I applied to some out-of-state schools. And
Are these
the
all
funny thing is,
MD schools or are they DO schools?
yeah, it's all MD school, all
Okay.
MD schools. And I think the funny thing was my wife, she's kind of prophetic. She's like, you're gonna go to Ross. She's like, you're gonna go to Ross. And I was like, no, no, like, she's like, why don't you apply there? I was like, I know I can get into Ross. I was like, that's not the issue. I was like, that's my backup plan. So I was like, let me see what I can do, in the States. And so she was like, okay, but so I think you should apply to Ross. And so I applied to the school, got letters saying, oh, thank you for being interested, but you're not a candidate at this time. And so once the cycle was almost over as far as like interviews, I was like, okay, let me put in my, interview, put in my application for Ross. And so then I actually talked with a physician that went to Ross. He graduated from Ross maybe
Okay.
about 4 years ago. And he actually recommended, he said, hey, like I know you want to stay in the States, but for a person like you who's a non-traditional student, it's like I think Ross would be the best fit for you.
Hmm.
And so yeah, and so then I applied, and the rest is history.
So you bring up a couple really interesting points. So before I forget them, let me ask, and then I'll ask them in a row, and then you can come back and talk about them. So the first
Okay.
the first thing that came to mind was, so you must have known something about Ross for your wife to
Mm-hmm.
say apply to Ross. And then the
Mm-hmm.
second thing is, why, as a non-traditional, is Ross a good fit for you? Just for our listeners, maybe somebody's listening and they're trying to
Okay.
decide, if Ross is a good fit for them.
Right, right. Actually, so there's a funny story I forgot to mention. So when I was working as a PA, I had a patient that I took care of that we did surgery on, and he was actually a physician. And so I mean, the me kind of person I am, I treat everybody the same. It doesn't matter if you're the janitor or if you're the CEO. I treat everybody the same. So we did the surgery, and after the surgery, he stayed in the hospital for a few days. But I was mainly the person that would round on him, make sure that everything was okay, make sure his drains were okay, basically kind of managed him in the hospital and his outpatient visits and all of those things. So um, I had never thought anything about it. And so maybe about a month later, um, he sent an email. He sent an email to my attending physician and to the CEO because he happened to know the CEO of the hospital at that time. And he told them, how great my attending was. He did the surgery. It was a great surgery. But Joseph was the one who really, stepped up, made sure that everything went smooth in the hospital, managed my care. And he was like, man, that guy is he was like amazing. And so the CEO wanted to meet me. And so I went with my attending to meet the CEO. And at that time, actually, I was in the process of deciding of going to medical school. And the CEO was like, you know, definitely from what I heard from my friend, which was the doctor I took care of, he was like, you definitely need to be a physician. He's like,
Hmm.
it doesn't matter where you go, if it's Caribbean school, whatever you have to do, you need to do that. And
Hmm.
funny things, I told my wife that, and she was like, he's kind of confirming it. He said like Caribbean school, like
He
even if
was
it's
he
Caribbean
was
school,
prophesying. He didn't even know what he was doing, right?
yeah. So
Hmm.
that kind of got the ball rolling. Like, okay, like I think I'll be okay with doing Ross. And and then the second question you said for non-traditional
Yeah. What makes
medical
Ross a
school.
good fit for somebody like you and I? I mean, I agree with you, but just
Yeah.
maybe we could put some points to it so people can. Mm.
So I think as a non-traditional student, so my feeling is that, the US MD school and DO school, not to put any shame to them, but I feel like they don't look at the whole applicant, right?
Yeah.
It is a business at the end of the day, so they
It's
have to
about
make their
numbers,
yeah, they have
numbers
to make
and money.
yes. So they're gonna pick the top of the top, the cream of the crop to make sure that those with the
Cream
top
of the
high.
crop and the top of the top. There you go. That's got a ring to it. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So they want to ensure that their students are, making a good name and representation for their school so that they get more students to come. Um, and I felt like Ross kind of gave me an opportunity. It was my last resort, but hey, they're giving me an opportunity. They're looking
Yep.
at, hey, they look at, hey, look, this guy has experience. He's been in the field. He has, life experience, which counts for something,
Hmm.
which I feel like a lot of the state MD schools and DO schools don't even consider.
Yeah.
So I feel like they're willing to give me a chance. And obviously, I have a hard work ethic. I've been through
Right.
ultrasound school. I've been through PA school. So obviously, I must have the work ethic to make it
You
work.
knew you were going to work hard to make it happen. And that's what I tell people too. Like Ross is not for everybody.
Mhm.
Caribbean's not for everybody, but if you know you're that kind of grinder who can, and I could testify, Joe is a grinder, man. He's there before everybody else, and he's one of the last ones to leave. So you put in the work, you put in the time, and you have to do that to be
Yeah.
successful here,
Yes, you do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, definitely, definitely.
And I think, that's one of the questions that I had sent you ahead of time was like, what's the secret to your success? Certainly that's one of them. It's just that you're willing to
Yeah,
work hard. It's not always, I tell people this, they think, oh, you must be so smart to be doing so well in medical school. I'm like, sometimes it's not even how smart you are. It's just,
no,
are you willing to work, put in the work?
yeah. That's what it is. It's willing to put in the work.
But
I
also the I gotta testify, it's the grace of God, honestly, for
it,
me.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
let me
It,
not put words in your mouth. You
no, definitely. I mean, definitely, it's God. I always tell everybody. I mean, I feel like everything that I've done in my life, it's not because I'm smart. Like I'm not the smartest person, but it's because I trust God with my life and I put Him first, and He's made sure in everything I put my hand to that He's made me successful.
Amen.
So, um, when I go to school, whatever I do, like the Bible says, like do as you're doing unto the Lord. So I make sure that I give it my all. I'm attentive. I'm showing up on time. I'm being respectful. I'm doing what I have to do. When I first went to actually when I was in undergrad, when I got out of high school, I kind of had this chip, not a chip on my shoulder, but it was kind of one of those things where I felt like to be successful in school, I shouldn't have to ask you for help. It's kind of like a pride thing where I was like, I should be able to get through these classes and pass and get A's and B's without having to ask for help. And it wasn't until actually I went to ultrasound school that I realized my wife taught me. She's like, nothing wrong with asking for help. It's better to get the help and the support you need to get you where you need to go
Yeah.
versus being stuck and delay. And that's something that I learned that like especially in my first semester, at Ross, what happened was the first half of the module that we have, I struggled a little bit, and it's being in a new country. Like I never left Florida. Grew up, born and raised in Florida, and never left anywhere else. So being adjusted to being on an island, being back in med school, and being all that rigor of all the classes
And being away
all,
from your wife and your
yeah,
son, which,
my wife and
you know,
son they stayed back in Florida. So there's a lot of adjustments, but I mean, I knew I could do it, but I barely passed, and I knew I could do better. So I went to ATL and I was like, hey, what do I need to do to be successful? What is the things that, what am I doing wrong? Show me or give me the tools to help me. And I met with one of the professors there, and I met with her every week until I started implementing what she said and
okay.
started seeing a change. And that kind of changed me from being a barely passing student to
Hmm.
making the dean's list and the
Yeah.
honor roll every semester after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
been so cool to join you in
yeah,
this journey. So for our
yeah,
listeners who don't know what ATL is, it's the Academy of Teaching and Learning. Our school
yeah.
has a certain department, for lack of a better word, where they focus on helping students like to learn better. Basically, they give them tools and strategies to improve their study habits and different ways that they can improve their scores. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Now, so we talked a little bit about that, your adjustment to the island and stuff.
Yeah.
So we interviewed Isaac last week. I don't know when when these are going to be broadcasted or whatever, or dropped, however you want to say it. But for our listeners, I've made a point to talk about the fact that I brought my family with me and how that was really important for me and my success. But
Hmm.
you are not unusual because we have other classmates who happen to leave, like Isaac,
Hmm.
and some others who left their wives and families back at home. And
Hmm.
I left, they left me for a month, and I could hardly survive. I mean, I was bawling my eyes out. Like, so how do you do that? Like, what's that been like? How hard has that
Yeah.
been?
It's very tough. It's very tough. I remember, you know, August 2023 when I got to the airport and had all my bags and was going through TSA to get through to the other side, and they're watching me. I was ready to break down and cry.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't believe this is happening. Like, and God, I know this is your plan, but it's still not easy, you know. So it was an adjustment, being away from them, missing out on, important birthdays and celebrations and certain holidays, and being with them, like our normal routine was hard.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but God gave me strength. We talk every day. Um,
And your wife was obviously supporting you in this decision. It wasn't,
yes, she was. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
she was. Originally, that we were thinking about them coming down with us because we had made plans. We had homeschooled our son the year before to kind of do like a test trial.
that's right.
But
Yeah.
then right before we came, we decided to just kind of keep everything the same for him, his routine, kind of keep everything the same. And so, but yeah, it was a challenge. It's like every day is especially the first week when I got to school, and because we had a week, there's that first week where you're just getting used to the island before you actually start real classes. So that was like one of the hardest weeks because like
Yeah.
I didn't see
And there
anybody.
wasn't a lot going on either. You're just like sitting
Yeah,
around.
buying groceries.
That first week I came to without my wife and kids. And I remember just being like, man, I don't even know what to do with myself because you're just so used to having these people
Yes.
around you. And I have three kids. So I'm like, I'm just used to constant, action, people around me, climbing on me, jumping on me, whatever. So I'm like, I didn't know what to do with myself for that first week. But well,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've always admired your ability to, but maybe in some ways it's helped you do well because
It
I
has.
suppose you don't have those responsibilities. Like I tell people all the time, like I go home at 6 and I like just stay with the
That's all.
family or whatever. So I suppose
Yeah.
for in some ways that may have helped you.
It has because I know. I know that when I was studying for the MCAT, it was hard because actually, looking in retrospect, yeah, I used to study a lot at home when I was studying for the MCAT. But along with that, I was working full time. I had my
Yeah.
family. So it was hard for me to be really successful in the MCAT because I had so many variables going on. But
Yeah.
I know that being here has allowed me to kind of just focus strictly on getting the task done.
Yeah.
Um, it's been hard, but it has been helpful because I'm able to dedicate my time. Obviously I check in on them. I call them in the morning, make sure that they're up, make sure they're getting ready for school, and try to participate as much as I can. But yeah, being here, just me has allowed me to just kind of focus on studying, get everything done, and then,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, and give it a 110%.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you brought up
Yeah.
an interesting point about the MCAT. Um, so I'm just curious, just in case there's some pre-med people out there listening. Do you think your MCAT score maybe played a role in not getting in the US and helping you be kind of pushed in the direction of Ross? Did you ever
Yeah.
think about retaking it, or you were just happy to do Ross, or what?
So I took it twice. So I took it before. So we started in August 2023. I took it in 2022. I think I took it at the beginning of the year, maybe around like March. I took the MCAT and I didn't do that well. I think I got maybe like 470.
Oh
It was
wow.
low. It was low.
Okay.
And so I decided to do a course. I did a blueprint course. So I did that for probably like 3 or 4 months, and I took it again in August of 2022. And I think I only went up by like 3 or 4 points. So at that point, I was like, I'm not gonna waste any more money. I'm like, I want to be started by the next year. So I'm like, Ross, this is it.
So you
And
only
that was
did one application cycle in the United States?
one application cycle, and
Okay.
then I only applied to, as far as Caribbean schools, Ross was the only Caribbean school because I talked to that physician, and I forgot to tell you that the hospital that I used to work at, one of the hospitals I used to work at as a PA, they're affiliated with Ross, and so it was always Ross students,
Okay.
and
So
Ross students that became residents there. So I knew that they had a big name there, so I was like,
so
I
you
think
saw
this,
people who were successful going
yeah,
through Ross. I think that's important because a lot of people they just read about the Caribbean, on Reddit or Facebook or wherever, and this is
yeah,
all bad. It's all bad. So I
yeah,
I did my research and I knew at least one guy who had gone to Ross who'd been successful. I knew a couple people who went to SGU, St. George's in Grenada, who had been
mhm,
successful. And I knew, like, for me, that I wanted to do a specialty, not dermatology, something super hyper competitive. So I knew I could
yeah,
be I knew I could be successful by coming here. But
yeah. And
oh
I
man,
think that's another thing too that is I mean with Caribbean schools it is a little harder, not to say it's impossible, nothing's impossible. It is a little bit more challenging to get into those desired specialties like derm or orthopedic surgery. And not to say it's impossible, but it
say it does happen, but it's
happens.
definitely
But
the majority are going into like IM or family med
yeah.
or
So like yeah, so for those listening, like if you know like, hey, I want to do internal medicine, family medicine, like I know that or internal medicine field like cardiology or
yeah.
GI, then
So there's a lot of
there's
pathways through IM that you can still, no matter where you're from.
so there's nothing wrong with going to Caribbean school, coming to Ross. Yeah, yeah.
Cool. So I guess the next question is kind of related to that. Then would you recommend, your younger self, if you could go back and give advice to your younger self, would you say run away, don't come to Ross, or would you say, you know what, it's been a good experience for me and I would recommend it? Or just, is there a certain
Criteria.
stratosphere of people that should not come here?
So there's a couple things about that. So I actually another thing. Now that we talk, there was a there's a PA that I was connected with that she went back to med school. She came to Ross, and she currently is I think she's doing her fellowship now. But at the time, he was doing her rotations, so getting ready to be where
Okay.
we are. And so I asked her, I was like, "Hey, give it to me straight." So I was like, "I, you know, this is what I want to do." And she kind of asked me questions like, "Hey, like why do you wanna do this? Because you're a PA, you have a great job, you have everything set. Why do you want to leave that behind to become an MD?" And I told her, it's not for money, because if you're doing it for money, it's the wrong reason. But
Right.
it's not for money, it's because I want to help people. I enjoy my job. I enjoy, you know, helping people, but I'm tired of being
And there
the
were
second string.
limitations, right? There were
Yeah,
limitations
but yeah,
on your scope of practice.
exactly. Yeah, you have to, check in with the physician. You have to kind of report to him about, you know, what you saw, what you did, what you ordered, and kind of just run through things through him. And I was like, I'm tired of, being the second string. I want to be the quarterback. So, but so she said, okay, that's you're going in for the right reason. And so I told her, I asked her about, what with Ross, is it a good school? And she said, it's what you make of it, which was very profound because it wasn't like she was telling me, yeah, it's the greatest school, definitely go. And she wasn't saying it's the worst school, but she says what you make of it. And for me, I feel like what she said was true because I mean, no school is perfect, right? You can go to a school in the States, go to school in the Caribbean, and there's always going to be some flaws, something that it's run by man, so there's not going to be something that you don't agree with.
Yeah.
But it's what you make of it. And my experience has been good. I can't say that you know I've had a bad experience. I've thrived. Being on this island, I enjoy the island. The people are
You
very
can't
helpful,
you
very
can't beat the
pleasant.
weather, but I didn't grow up in Miami, so I don't know.
Yeah, I'm used to the weather, so it's good to be in a familiar territory. You have the beaches. So for me, I mean, it was a good experience, and to me, I would recommend it. But I'd say, yeah, it is what you make of it. And like we said before, like the thing with Ross and Caribbean schools in a whole is that you have to be dedicated and disciplined. Because if you're not
Self
disciplined,
self motivated.
self-innovated, because if not, it's not the place for you, and you're gonna hate your life
Yeah.
because
And
you have to
sadly,
really,
we have a lot of friends who didn't make it.
yeah, yeah.
They weren't
And I mean,
motivated enough, apparently, or something.
yeah, and sometimes you have to just go through the process. I mean, see, hey, am I made of this? And it may not be right now. May not be their time. Like how for me, maybe 10 years down the road will be their time to do it. But
Yeah. You got to
yeah,
wait till you're 46.
politics is the magic you get. I don't
Oh
know.
man.
You can start
Well,
when you can.
well, Joe, it has been awesome having you on. We're just gonna cut it short here in a few minutes, but I do want to ask one last question. And
Sure.
tell us what is in the future for you. What do you plan to do with this MD degree? Where you want to go? What do you want to do? What's your future look like?
So my future past step, past comp, past step. Um, so my future, right now deciding between I used to work as a PA in oncology, in surgical oncology. So I have a passion for oncology patients, and I also have a passion for radiology. So right now I'm kind of between those two. Once I start rotations, I'll see. I'll do rotations in both. So I'm definitely between those two, as far as specialty wise. I do like radiation oncology, or I want to go into radiation. I'm thinking about radiation oncology, because of
Okay.
the opportunity to work with oncology patients and use imaging,
Mm-hmm.
um, as well as having an impact on the patient. So, but yeah, yeah.
That's cool. So 2 minutes or less. Why would radiation oncology be something you would want to do? It seems like for some people that would be depressing, working with cancer patients. But I mean,
Yeah.
you've got the right personality for it. But tell our listeners why that would be such a desirable field for a guy like you.
For me, I just have a heart for people, especially like I said, working previously with oncology patients. You know, helping patients go through a hard time is like kind of like the heart of who I am, you know.
It's a
So
ministry, really. It's kind of like a ministry.
yes, history and being able to share and impart and I want to say give hope, but to share hope with with those patients and get them through a difficult time is something that really speaks to me.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Joe, thank you so much for taking time out of our busy last couple of weeks of medical school to be
Anytime.
here on the Inalienable Rights podcast, where we talk about our journey and your journey, other people's journeys of life, faith, and their pursuit of medicine. So we've heard it through Joe's life. I mean, his life is a life full of faith, and his journey is really cool. It's exciting to be alongside you and to watch this happen. And I hope that, I mean, you and Isaac, you are my best friends here at Ross, and I
Yes,
pray that these are lifelong friends that we've made here in
yes.
Barbados. And I found out a couple of weeks ago that your anniversary is very close to mine, so we're gonna have to like plan some future anniversary trip to Italy or something.
Oh, yeah,
My wife really wants to go to Italy, so
yeah, yeah, yes.
we
You
gotta
gotta
do
go.
something cool like that.
Yes, yeah, for sure, for sure.
All right, well, I'll say good night to you now, but I will see you in the morning.
All right, get a
Uh,
few hours.
yes,
All
thank you so
right,
much, Joe. We'll talk to you later.
all right. Talk to you later.
Well, that pretty much sums it up. I feel like we don't really need to add too much because Joe did a great job. So
yeah, thanks for
hope
checking
you
it out.
enjoyed, and we'll catch you next week.
Please leave us comments, email us, check us out on all of our little
And
platforms.
subscribe on YouTube. That'd
Subscribe
be
on
great.
YouTube, yes, and give us some ideas for future episodes.
Bye for now.
Catch you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Inalienable Rights Podcast. You can find Justin and Alyssa on Instagram at Inalienable Rights Podcast and email them at inalienablerightspodcast@gmail.com with any questions or topics you want them to discuss in the future. See you on the other side of the wormhole.